Nobody noticed the exact moment the empath broke. That's what makes this kind of pain so dangerous. It doesn't happen loudly. No slammed doors. No screaming. No dramatic final speech. Just a slow emotional disappearance that started after being hurt one too many times by people they would have died for. And if you've ever loved someone who made you feel emotionally invisible, then this is going to hit somewhere deep inside you. Because you remember what it felt like to overthink every text message while they acted unaffected. You remember apologizing for emotions that were completely valid. You remember sitting alone at night trying to understand how someone could say, "I love you," while slowly destroying your nervous system. And the worst part? You kept blaming yourself. You thought maybe you were too emotional, too intense, too needy. But the truth was darker than that. You were giving unconditional love to people who only knew how to give conditional attention. And eventually, your soul got tired. That's the day the empath went silent. Not weak, not heartless, just finished. Finished translating their pain into softer language so other people could stay comfortable. Finished begging for consistency from emotionally unavailable people. Finished setting themselves on fire just to keep cold people warm. And once an empath reaches that point, something terrifying changes inside them. They stop chasing. They stop explaining. They stop trying to convince people to care. And suddenly the people who ignored them become obsessed with getting their attention back. Because toxic people rarely notice your value while they have access to you. They notice it the moment they lose control of your energy. The first painful truth every empath learns too late is that they were never addicted to the person. They were addicted to hope. Hope is what kept you trapped. Hope made you ignore red flags because you kept focusing on potential. Hope made you excuse emotional neglect because you remembered how sweet they were in the beginning. Hope made you romanticize inconsistency like it was depth. And toxic relationships survive on exactly that. Not love. Confusion. One day they make you feel special. The next day they pull away emotionally without explanation. And your nervous system starts panicking, trying to get back to the emotional high they gave you before the distance started. That's not healthy attachment. That's psychological conditioning. People think manipulation always looks aggressive. It doesn't. Sometimes manipulation looks like silence after intimacy, distance after vulnerability, affection only when you're about to leave. And empaths are especially vulnerable to this because they naturally search for emotional meaning in everything. You felt every shift in tone, every delayed response, every moment they emotionally disappeared while physically staying present. And because you loved deeply, you kept trying harder. You over-explained, overgave, or gave. Meanwhile, they slowly became comfortable receiving emotional loyalty they never truly earned. That's what destroyed you, not the betrayal itself. The realization that you kept shrinking your own needs just to maintain connection. You stopped asking, "Do I feel safe with this person?" and started asking, "How do I stop them from leaving me emotionally?" That question changes people. Because once survival mode enters a relationship, love disappears. And empaths spend years confusing emotional anxiety with passion. But real love does not force you to constantly recover from someone. Real love does not leave you emotionally starving while calling it complicated. The reason the empath eventually goes silent is because their body finally realizes what their heart kept denying. You cannot heal inside the environment that keeps hurting you. And when that realization hits, the entire world becomes quiet. You stop reacting to breadcrumbs. Stop begging for clarity. Stop chasing closure. From people committed to misunderstanding you. And toxic people hate that version of you. Because your silence removes their access. See, emotionally unhealthy people become addicted to empath energy. Your reassurance, your patience, your emotional labor, your endless understanding. You became the emotional home for people who never once asked if you had somewhere safe to rest too. But the moment an empath emotionally detaches, everything changes. The overthinking disappears. The emotional panic disappears. The need to explain yourself disappears. And suddenly you see the relationship clearly for the first time. Not through love, through truth. You realize they only came close when they felt you pulling away. You realize they ignored your pain until your silence affected them personally. You realize your empathy became a tool they unconsciously depended on. And the hardest part? You still love them while realizing all of this. That's the curse of being an empath, you can understand. Someone's wounds while bleeding from the damage they caused you. But understanding someone's trauma does not mean tolerating their behavior. And that sentence right there changes lives. Because empaths are taught to confuse compassion with responsibility. You thought if you loved someone hard enough, patiently enough, deeply enough, they would finally become emotionally safe. But people only change when they decide their pain is no longer an excuse. Not when you sacrifice yourself trying to rescue them. And eventually, the empath becomes exhausted. Not physically, spiritually. The kind of exhaustion where your soul no longer recognizes itself. You laugh less, sleep less, trust less. You begin mourning yourself while still trying to save the relationship. That's when the silence starts. The second truth hurts even deeper. Some people never loved the real you. They loved your tolerance. They loved how much pain you could absorb without leaving. They loved how quickly you forgave, how deeply you listened, how easily you empathized with their trauma while ignoring your own. You became emotionally convenient. And emotionally convenient people are rarely appreciated until they disappear. That's why everything changes the moment the empath finally chooses themselves. The moment you stop accepting disrespect, people call you cold. The moment you stop over-explaining your feelings, people call you distant. The moment you stop carrying the emotional weight of the relationship alone, people suddenly accuse you of changing. But you did change. Pain changed you. Disappointment changed you. The endless emotional inconsistency changed you. Because one day you finally realized something terrifying. You kept trying to prove your worth to people who benefited from you doubting it. That realization creates emotional awakening. Because confidence does not begin when someone finally loves you correctly. Confidence begins when you stop abandoning yourself just to keep someone else comfortable. Our table. And once an empath learns that, they become dangerous in the most beautiful way. Not dangerous because they become cruel. Dangerous because they finally see clearly. Now you notice patterns immediately. You stop romanticizing mixed signals. You stop confusing emotional chaos with chemistry. You stop chasing emotionally unavailable people, hoping your love will unlock them. Because healed empaths understand something broken empaths don't. Love is not supposed to feel like survival. And for the first time in your life, you start protecting your energy instead of offering unlimited access to it. That transformation shocks people, because they were used to the version of you that tolerated everything. But the healed empath no longer negotiates peace for connection. That version is gone forever. You stop forcing conversations. Stop begging for reassurance. Stop staying available for people who only contact you when they feel lonely. And something incredible begins happening internally. Why? You start hearing your own intuition again. Not your trauma, not your attachment wounds. Your intuition. The voice that warned you from the beginning. The voice you ignored because loneliness felt scarier than self-betrayal. But now, you finally listen. You realize healthy love never leaves you emotionally confused all the time. Healthy love does not punish vulnerability. Healthy love does not disappear whenever accountability appears. Healthy love feels safe, consistent, peaceful. And at first, peace feels unfamiliar. Because your nervous system became addicted to emotional unpredictability. You confused intensity with intimacy for so long that calmness almost feels suspicious. That's what healing actually is. Not becoming emotionless. Learning that you deserve relationships that do not require self-destruction. And slowly, you stop mourning people who hurt you. You start mourning the version of yourself that accepted less than you deserved. That grief hits differently, because you realize how many nights you spent overthinking people who slept peacefully after breaking your heart. You remember every time you silenced your own pain to avoid losing someone. Every time you accepted emotional crumbs and called it love. Every time you abandoned your own boundaries because you feared being misunderstood. And suddenly, you feel anger. Not toxic anger, sacred anger. The kind of anger that wakes your soul up. The kind that says, I will never betray myself like that again. That's when the empath becomes unstoppable. Because once an empath learns how to combine compassion with boundaries, they become almost impossible to manipulate. Now your kindness has standards. Now your empathy has limits. Now your heart belongs to people who know how to protect it instead of draining it. And yes, some people will call you different. They'll say you changed. They'll say you became harder to reach. But what they really mean is, you no longer allow me unlimited access to your energy. And that's growth, that's healing, that's emotional evolution. The empath did not become cold, they became selective. And there is a massive difference between the two. Cold people stop feeling. Healed empaths feel everything. They just stop sacrificing themselves for people committed to misunderstanding them. So if you're listening tonight, alone in your room, heart exhausted from carrying emotions nobody ever noticed, I need you to hear this carefully. You were never too much. You were giving too much to people who were never emotionally equipped to receive it correctly. Your sensitivity was never the weakness. Your lack of boundaries was. And once you understand that, your entire life changes, because now you stop asking, how do I make people love me? And start asking, why did I believe I had to earn basic emotional safety through suffering? That question heals generations. And maybe, just maybe, the reason your soul feels distant lately, the reason you've gone quiet, the reason, as you no longer have the energy to chase people, is because your spirit is finally choosing itself after years of abandonment. Maybe the silence is not emptiness. Maybe it's recovery. Maybe this is the first chapter of your rebirth. And if nobody has ever told you this before, I'm proud of the version of you that survived all of this silently. The version that kept loving after betrayal. The version that kept showing up while emotionally shattered. The version that almost disappeared trying to save people who were committed to staying broken. You deserved better than survival love. You deserved consistency, presence, reciprocity, peace. And one day, you will stop mourning the people who lost you, because you'll finally understand how powerful you became after surviving everything that almost destroyed your heart. Until then, protect your energy, protect your peace, and never apologize for the silence that saved your life. If this message reached the part of you that nobody else understands, stay close. There are more conversations here for the people who feel everything deeply but rarely say it out loud. And wherever you are tonight, I hope you finally choose yourself. Good night.